The spot kick that saved England, now through to the quarter-finals of the World Cup.
Kelly smashes England through!
They did it. They won on penalties, beating Nigeria. But after their star striker was sent off, it's a match players and fans may want to forget.
Before this game, we said this is not an easy game. They're very organised, they're very transitional, they're very physical and athletic. That's exactly what we saw.
Also this lunchtime, bunking up on the Bibi Stockholm barge. The first migrants have gone on board. Plus,
you can't hurt me anymore than the peanut butter now.
David Hunter on what his wife said when she begged him to kill her at their retirement home in Cyprus. How the cancelled World Scout Jamboree in South Korea has left UK Scouts with a £1 million bill. And how the I'm a Celebrity castle has been saved from collapse.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. What a game, but not in a good way. England have made it through to the last stage of the World Cup after beating Nigeria on penalties. But the last-minute victory only came after a moment of madness earlier, which saw star striker Lauren James getting a red card for stamping on the back of a Nigerian defender. She'll now face a one-match ban or even more. Chloe Keedy on the drama Down Under.
England's World Cup destiny all came down to this. Chloe Kelly has a habit of delivering when her country needs her the most. Kelly! And she didn't disappoint. After a nail-biting game that went all the way to penalties, England's ecstasy was equalled by Nigeria's utter devastation. The fans always thought they could do it as they skipped into the stadium in Brisbane full of belief. But in Nigeria, England faced their toughest test yet. The African champions now stood between them and a World Cup quarter-final. And in a tense first half, it was the Super Falcons who dominated. Ashley Plumpter came close to giving Nigeria an early lead, but England was saved by the bar. And the second half got going in similar style, but Nigeria couldn't find the goal that their performance deserved. England had their chances, but also failed to convert. Saved! And if things weren't going to plan for them then, they were about to get much worse. Lauren James, England's star player of this tournament so far, was sent off for stamping on a Nigerian player. Down to 10 women, England hung on by their fingertips to send the game into extra time. Mary Earps kept her country in it. And her job was about to get even harder. The dreaded penalties, excruciating for the fans watching both in Australia and back at home. First up for England was Georgia Stanway, and the pressure proved too much. But the Nigerian players were feeling it too, giving Beth England the chance to put her country ahead. Nigeria then missed again, and England began to believe. It was Rachel Daly's turn to step up, and she delivered.
Daly, that is a fearsome penalty.
So did Alex Greenwood, which meant now it was up to Chloe Kelly. The hopes of a nation rested on her, and coolly she kept them alive. A great roar from the Lionesses, but for their coach, uncomfortable questions about why one of her players was sent off.
It's a game where the emotions are really high, when the intensity is so high, and it's just a split second that things happen. And then she got that red card.
This team's special. We did it in the Euros, we did it in the Finalissima, and we're here again tonight and doing it. And we keep pushing forward. There's more to come from this special team.
But for now, the fans are celebrating. Their Australian adventure isn't over yet. The Lionesses live to fight another day. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
Good morning, Britain. Correspondent Nithya Rajan has been with fans celebrating England's win in Brisbane.
Well, the Lionesses have roared their way to victory once again, and I'm here with all of the fans who are over the moon about this result.
I say meow.
Here we go.
It doesn't matter. We're in the quarterfinals. My heart, seriously. Let's go, England. Let's go. Let's go, England. Let's go. This is it. This is it.
What was the moment that your heart sank and you thought this isn't going to happen?
Before the penalties. James getting sent off.
Oh, yeah.
That was the bit. No, Mike, listen, Lauren James, we all have emotional outbursts. No one blame her for anything because we've all done that in our life. It's a shame it happened in the round of 16 for the World Cup, but we still love you, Lauren. You are amazing and you will be back.
And what is your message to Serena, who's had to plan for every possibility?
You're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing because it's working.
Kick more goals than the opposition. Crack the code of soccer.
Yeah,
right.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask you what you thought of the match? What did you think?
I think Nigeria should have won.
Really?
Yep.
And who were you supporting tonight?
Nigeria, of course.
Okay. And were you heartbroken?
Yeah, heartbroken. I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry. Devastated.
Okay, well, it was a good result overall for the England fans, but of course for you, not so much.
Not so much.
All right, let's have a listen to you guys. Who were you supporting tonight?
England tonight. But Nigeria played really well. It was a fantastic game. So big congratulations to Nigeria.
And
they
can I
played
ask,
really well.
Fair enough.
And thanks to England for the win.
Newcastle, Manchester. Okay. Yes. Was there a point in the game where you thought this isn't going to happen?
I actually thought we were going to lose.
Yeah, by half time I was like, we need to change up our tactics.
English women will always come through and we're going to win. We're
Wow,
going to take it home.
confident.
Euros first, and now we're going to have the World Cup. We're going to win.
But
It's coming home.
It's coming.
All right,
Go
ladies.
Matildas.
A message for everybody here, but yeah, if anybody can do it, they believe the Lionesses certainly can.
Nithya Rajan reporting there from Brisbane in Australia. Next this lunchtime, the first migrants have boarded the barge that is set to house them in Dorset. The Bibby Stockholm is now fitted with bunk beds so it can sleep 500 people. The government's plan is to help cut the daily £6 million cost of putting asylum seekers up in hotels. But the barge plan has been beset with delays and opposition. Our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan, joins me now from Portland in Dorset. What more can you tell us now this day has arrived?
Well, as you say, the first migrants have arrived, the first asylum seekers have arrived on the Bibby Stockholm. We are expecting more to arrive during the day, up to about 50 in the initial tranche, with the numbers building up to 500 in all who will be housed on the Bibby Stockholm. There is local opposition to this barge being used in this place. There are people behind me who think that it is inappropriate accommodation for asylum seekers. There are other people who think that they impact on the community is inappropriate and they don't want the asylum seekers to be housed here. But the government says that in order to bring down that bill, they have to put people in accommodation like this. But of course, even the 500 who will eventually be housed in the Bibby Stockholm is really a drop in the ocean compared to the asylum backlog of more than 150,000.
And Carl, in a separate policy, but with the same aim of cutting down on illegal immigrants coming to the country, businesses face bigger fines if they employ people and landlords face bigger fines if they house people.
That's right. The government has announced today that in order to try and crack down on the so-called the business model of the people smugglers, they will raise these fines to make it less attractive for people to either house or employ people illegally. So, for example, for employers, the fines will go up from 15,000 to 45,000 per illegal worker for the first offence. For landlords, from 1,000 to 10,000 pounds for an illegal occupier, all aimed at cracking down on the business model. And yet, the numbers of people coming across the channel illegally still seems to rise year on year.
Carl Dinnan, thank you very much. The man who killed his wife, who was suffering from cancer in Cyprus, says when they first discussed ending her life, she said, "You can't hurt me any more than I'm hurting now." In his first television interview, David Hunter told Good Morning Britain he took weeks to be persuaded to help her. He was found guilty of manslaughter for the killing in 2021, but freed last week. Greg Eastle has the story.
David Hunter visiting the grave of the wife he killed at their home in Cyprus. He'd always insisted he'd taken her life out of love.
I love you, darling. Sorry, I love you so much.
At the time of her death, Janice Hunter was terminally ill, and last week a Cypriot court set her husband free after 19 months in prison after finding him guilty of manslaughter but not guilty of murder in what the judge described as an exceptional case. This morning, in his first television interview, David Hunter told ITV's Good Morning Britain how his wife had pleaded with him to end her suffering, a plea he eventually gave into.
At one point, she got quite a circle. And I said, look, OK, I'll help you. But I said, I'll not tell you when, and I'll not tell you how.
Married for 53 years, David Hunter said at the time he didn't care about the consequences and simply wanted to end his own life too.
At the time, I didn't want to live without her. That's why I tried to take my life. Well, I didn't succeed. So, actually, when the police came, my feeling was I couldn't care less what you do. I just had no feelings. I was numb.
Watching that interview back in the northeast this morning, the mates he used to work with down the mines who'd campaigned for his release.
When this first happened, I went to see him in Nicosia prison, and he said to me, he said, "Barry, do me a favour, will you please go and put some flowers on the grave?" I mean, I know what I felt when I went and put the flowers on the grave, so probably less than a thousandth of what he was feeling.
David Hunter's now calling for changes in the law in Britain and Cyprus to make it easier to help people end their own lives. But he won't be coming home to campaign, vowing instead to stay living close to his wife's grave for as long as he's still alive. Greg Eastle, ITV News.
An aborted trip to the World Scout Jamboree in South Korea will cost the UK scouting movement more than £1 million. The event itself has now been cancelled because of a typhoon, but thousands of British Scouts had already left the site because of unsafe conditions due to a heat wave. Their relocation to Seoul will now impact Scout clubs here for years to come. Barbara Holmes has more.
It's an adventure, just not quite the one they were promised. After 4 years of planning and fundraising, the UK's 4,500 strong delegation pulled out of the World Scouting Jamboree, just hours before the event itself was cancelled. A South Korean minister saying a typhoon that had already battered much of the region was due to pass through the area, meaning tens of thousands of delegates needed to be evacuated. But it was the final blow for an event that had already come under heavy criticism. An intense heat wave left more than 130 people needing treatment for heat-related illnesses. That compounded other concerns around sanitation, food and medical facilities.
We are disappointed in the organisers and the organisation, and we do feel let down.
The British youngsters are in Seoul, continuing their Jamboree journey in slightly more comfortable conditions.
It is sad, I think, for some that we had to leave, because we obviously did sign up to be in a Jamboree, but I think everyone does understand why we had to go.
I was sad to leave the Jamboree, however, I think it is for the best because I wasn't feeling that great, and now we've got aircon.
But the sudden change of plans has cost the UK movement £1 million. It's been taken from their reserves, something they say could impact them for the next 5 years. For an organisation whose motto is "Be Prepared," the last week raises many questions about how this could have happened. Barbara Holmes, ITV News.
Still to come this lunchtime, get me out of disrepair, the lifeline for the I'm a Celebrity castle. First, a new centre for vaccine research has opened at the heavily fortified Porton Down campus in Wiltshire. 200 scientists are tasked with identifying current threats and future ones, like Disease X, which is what they've named what could cause the next potential pandemic. Our science correspondent Martin Stew went to see them at work.
There are really two ways that a civilian population could counter the effects of nerve gases.
Since it was opened during the First World War, Porton Down has been the secret line of defence against the scariest hazards to our health, both chemical and biological.
It can be used to administer a vaccine at a very high rate of striking to large numbers of people in the event of a catastrophe.
Some areas, including those dealing with deadly Category 4 diseases like Ebola, are still out of bounds, but they have let our cameras in to the new Vaccine Development and Evaluation Centre.
Now, they're using a dead virus today, which is why I'm allowed to be in the lab, but this is designed to deal with Category 3 viruses. That includes things like COVID, so ones potentially where there isn't a cure, they may spread easily, or the effects of it can be really damaging.
200 scientists work here. They're able to carry out 30 times more tests a week than they did pre-COVID. The idea is they'll be able to develop vaccines for future mystery diseases within 100 days, rather than the 10 years it used to take. It's a £65 million investment, but critics have questioned cuts to other areas.
Kate Bingham, who headed up the vaccine task force, recently criticised the government for scaling back the ability to manufacture vaccines quickly. Is she wrong?
Kate and I think, probably have exactly the same ambition. What we want is to have a vaccine development pathway. Since I think most of Kate's comments, actually the government has invested in a Moderna strategic partnership, and the advantage of this facility is that if companies are onshoring in the UK, then obviously we can support more. We've got more capability and capacity.
Testing shows current vaccines are still effective against COVID, which is on the rise again. But there are plenty of other threats. Avian flu is widespread amongst birds and has infected some mammals. And more exotic diseases are spreading our way.
The health effects from climate change are already being felt. We are already seeing a change in the distribution of, for example, vector-borne diseases. Those are the sort of viruses, for example, that are carried by mosquitoes and by ticks.
One such tick, carrying potentially deadly Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, was found in the New Forest. It's not a major threat here yet, but a vaccine is being developed nonetheless. In the secret fight against invisible threats, it's better safe than sorry. Martin Stew, ITV News, Porton Down.
A cabinet minister has warned businesses to stay out of politics and cultural debates after Costa Coffee faced a backlash over a transgender campaign. John Glenn, who's in the Treasury, said businesses need to focus on providing high-quality products and services. Our political reporter, Jasmine Cameron-Chileshi, is at Westminster. Jasmine, Mr Glenn taking aim at some businesses?
Yeah, so John Glenn's intervention was pretty interesting. His comments followed the decision by Costa Coffee to launch an advert which depicted a transgender individual. Now, as you say, his remarks were made to a right-wing think tank. He argued that businesses ought to focus on providing high-quality goods and services rather than making some political statements. Now, it's pretty unusual to hear from a Conservative government making public remarks about what is essentially the editorial decisions of private companies. But in recent months, we have seen ministers getting increasingly confident weighing in on some of these so-called culture war issues. In recent weeks, we saw ministers side with Nigel Farage over his dispute with the banks NatWest and Coutts when he argued that he had been debanked for his political beliefs. Now, the government knows that the public are focused on policy issues such as housing or migration, but there are individuals close to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak who believe that there are votes to be won by talking about some of these tricky cultural issues, especially when it comes to gender and self-identity, and especially if there is a perception that the Labour Party and businesses are out of step with the thinking of the general population.
And what's Costa said in response?
So the response, the advert has been welcomed by some, it's been criticised by others. Costa has defended it and argued that actually it represents diversity and inclusion. Ultimately, I think this is a small row that will die down, but I think as we head towards the general election, I think we're going to see more and more ministers weighing in on some of these cultural issues, especially if they think that they can use it to create a dividing line between them and the Labour Party.
Jasmine, Cameron, Chaleshi, thank you very much. Finally, this lunchtime, the Welsh castle that saved I'm a Celebrity from being off-air during the pandemic is now being saved itself. Gwyrich Castle was deemed a perfect place to host contestants in 2020 and 2021 because the ruins had no roof or decent floors. But, as Daniel Henry reports, that's about to change.
Go on, not that slow. When the cameras stopped rolling on I'm a Celebrity, a combination of delayed development plans and extreme weather conditions left Gwyrich Castle in a critical condition. Now, there's a lifeline.
The task ahead of us, it's not small. It is the largest restoration project of its type in the UK, and it's very daunting, and it's very delicate as well. It is a Grade 1 listed building, so you can't just, throw a bit of money at it. You have to go through consultants, you have to do it properly, and it costs money.
This was the castle without a crown. Now, the National Heritage Memorial Fund and the Richard Broyd Charitable Trust will spend more than £4 million on urgent repairs.
So currently it is derelict, so there's no glass in the windows, there's no floors, and there are no roofs. In the majority of the building, there are a few roofs in little places, but nothing that's here that makes it look like it's livable in, basically.
It's easy to see why this building has been described as one of Britain's most important mansions. Now, its heritage and history will live on for decades to come. Daniel Henry, ITV News.
Lucrezia's here at 6:30 from me. Bye-bye.